Yo, I'm Bob, totally blind since birth, into He-Man, talking about the Netflix original series He-Man and the Masters of the Universe. So we're on season 2, episode 4. This one's a very hungry dragonfly. Spoilers ahead, watch the episode before listening to my thoughts, or y'all gonna get spoiled. Share, like, subscribe, notification button, all that YouTube stuff. And with that being said, I'm getting into the episode. So the title alone makes me think of the old kids book that we all probably read back in the day. I would be willing to wager quite a few of us read that. But I think Gary the Dragonfly, he's quite a bit more interesting than the Caterpillar. My apologies if I offended any very hungry Caterpillar fans out there. I mean, come on, we should have outgrown that book by now, though. We're talking about cartoons, for Grayskull's sake. Come on. So at the beginning of the episode, we have Adam in Castle Grayskull. I guess he's Adam. He might be He-Man. I'm not sure. And he is practicing some sweet, sweet moves with the Power Sword. So it reminded me of being a kid of around 7 in 1991, getting my He-Man Power Sword for Christmas and flinging that around with reckless abandon in my room, banging it into the walls, pretending the walls were Skeletor. I mean, my sibling, my brother, he lived in Memphis, so I couldn't fence with him. So my walls bore the brunt of the Power Sword. Oh boy, that was pretty interesting. You'd hear my stepdad from the other room. Hey, what are you doing to the walls, man? Why don't you go outside and fling it around? Go fling the sword around outside. So yeah, Adam is interrupted by Tila, and she tells him everyone needs to get into the Wind Raider and meet her because Evelyn is getting close to that final sigil piece. And they got to stop her from obtaining it and all that good stuff. So he's not quite sure what to tell her regarding Eldris because, well, no one knows what's happened to Eldris since she used her magic to transport the castle to Avion. And there's a very real possibility, of course, that Eldris might not be around anymore. And Adam says, well, Eldris is helping Duncan with something. And Crass isn't here because she's going back to the Tiger Tribe village. She's working on some secret project she's not telling me about. And that kind of got me a bit nervous because I don't really know if I trust this character. She's letting her havoc get the best of her, I think. But yeah, last time we saw her, she was grinning menacingly as Stratos went on his not so merry way after Adam gave him the boot out of the Masters. So yeah, so it's just going to be him and Cringer and that Wind Raider. Duncan's going to stay behind because he's noticing that Proto Havoc is bleeding off of the sigil piece or pieces that they have now, and he's thinking that this is the same energy that Eldris used to transport Grayskull, and Cringer's saying something like, well, hey, wait a minute, Proto Havoc is bad, isn't it? And Duncan's thinking that the Proto Havoc and the power of Grayskull, it's like it's two sides of the same coin. Flashing back to season 1, I think it's probably all in how you use it. It's what you do with it that really matters. You can use it for good or you can use it for evil. I imagine we'll probably see quite a bit more about this in the future, these two energies working in tandem. But for now, Duncan's staying behind, and Adam and Cringer, they got to go figure out where in the heck Tila is. So you have Tila and Evelyn, and they're fighting because Tila manages to ambush Evelyn. But then there's this big psychic feedback thingy going on. You see this giant dragonfly flying in from out of nowhere, and he eats them. The intro rocks, and then they're inside the belly of this massive dragonfly, and they are thinking that, whoa, that's where the final sigil piece is. He ate it. Evelyn and Tila, I think they'd met at the same statue that we saw in season 1. I'm thinking it might be the same statue. I'm not sure because the descriptive audio doesn't really tell us about the location, but I think it probably is the same statue where Orko the Great and his fellow Trollans ascended. And Evelyn came to the conclusion that he must have used that sigil piece for their ascension. So, I mean, I guess you can use this energy for good, but I mean, this dragonfly has consumed the sigil piece. They're trying to fight each other while they're in the dragonfly, and they wind up finally leaving Gary's body, and Evelyn makes him able to speak. She casts a spell, and the most humorous voice, one of the most humorous voices I've ever heard, came out of Gary, and it is none other than the voice of Bobcat Goldthwait. So I remember first seeing this guy in Scrooged with Bill Murray in 1991, around the holidays, probably around the same time I was receiving my Havoc staff, the second of the He-Man role-playing items at the time. See, I remember him being given a raspberry on the stomach by Bill Murray. That scene always sticks with me from that movie. And yeah, I've really enjoyed Bobcat's work, and it's really cool to hear him doing the Dragonfly in this episode. He doesn't really want to hurt anybody. He's just ravenous, and he tells them, "Hey, I've been looking for these tasty magical morsels. I went to this mountain that looked like a snake, but it was already gone. Then I showed up at the wreckage of this big train thing, and the second bit was already gone." So he's been tracking the pieces of the Sigil of His. So he actually ate the third piece, I guess, in the statue there. So they're trying to figure out how in the heck they're going to get it away from him. I think they're fighting again, and Gary just he eats Tila's staff. He doesn't want to give up his sigil piece because he says he's finally full. And so I guess Tila reverts back to herself, no longer the sorceress, and she just she's left with Evelyn, and they're kind of having to figure out what they're supposed to do now. They're around a campfire. They're eating kebabs, and Evelyn faints because she's a lot weaker since the Havoc has left her system. And later, when she comes to her senses, she tells Tila she just wants it so she can rekindle her energy. She doesn't want to command an army of snake zombies. She just wants her powers back. She doesn't want... I don't think she wants to have to rely on Skeletor or anything like that. Then you have He-Man and Battle-Cat showing up in the Wind Raider. You have Gary eventually showing up. They all board the Wind Raider, and I think Evelyn at one point, she calls it the Dreadwing, which is kind of funny. I guess that's what the bad guys call their Wind Raiders. I'm wondering if Trapjaw painted them to be different colors, things like that. I don't know. But yeah, Gary shows up. He's trying to wrestle the Wind Raider to the ground. He thinks it's another big bug like himself. And so you have Evelyn and Tila. They're fighting in the air. And you have He-Man and Battle-Cat. They're in the Wind Raider trying to get it to land. And in the meantime, the two ladies are just firing spells at each other. Tila's trying to keep Gary safe. He's just in the middle of everything. And he's just trying to avoid being blasted. Evelyn kind of shoots him a couple times, and he kind of spirals down to the ground. I guess all the spiraling caused him to sick up some of the things he's eaten, because he throws up Tila's staff. She turns back into the sorceress. Then they're back in the air again. Then you have He-Man and Battle-Cat. They finally manage to emerge from the crashed Wind Raider, and they both cover their mouths because they see that big pile of Gary's puke there, and they're like, "Oh, good God." And Adam says something like, "Hey, man, we were just up in the air. We got to go up there again." So you have the fight going on. It's just a bunch of spells being shot. It's cool to see just how far Tila has come since the first episode. She's more than holding her own against Evelyn. And awesome voice work, vocal performances from Kimberly Brooks and Grey Griffin in this episode. Really cool to see these two characters interacting. They actually have a bit of a bonding moment around that campfire. And then we see Gary. He's tired of Evelyn. He's wanting to eat her because he's back in the air again too. And Tila actually saves Evelyn. And she's like, "Why did you do that? Why did you save me?" And Tila says, "Well, I'm not evil." And so everything eventually winds up okay. I think He-Man and Battle-Cat do the Heimlich maneuver on Gary. It sounded as if that's what the descriptive audio track was trying to describe. And the sigil piece finally comes out of his mouth. And the good guys get the piece before leaving and kicking the sorceress aside. Evelyn basically tells her, "Hey, you might want to ask He-Man why he's lying to you. Something's not right here. And she's, I think, trying to drive a rift between He-Man and Teela, our new sorceress. So Evelyn just goes off laughing, and they eventually do send Gary to the Mystic Mountains where he can find a more suitable food source. And I like that he's still around. I was kind of wondering if they were going to kill him off in this episode. I mean, I know it's a kid show, but I feel like this is a series in which we could potentially lose characters. I mean, there are some very lighthearted moments in these episodes, but then again, there are some very dark moments in these episodes as well. So I wasn't sure as to whether or not Gary was still going to be around by the end. But yeah, they just sent him to the Mystic Mountains, and I don't know what he's eating there. Hopefully, I don't know, snow? A couple of trees? I don't know if that's going to satisfy him or not. Maybe we'll see him again. And amazing performance by Bobcat Goldthwait. I think everybody did one heck of a job in this episode. So the episode ends, of course, with Teela asking Adam, what's going on? Where's Eldris? What aren't you telling me about Eldris? So the episode ends with that question having been posed. And then we get a really cool glimpse of the next episode. We see Skeletor on some kind of motorcycle. So I guess that's going to be a new vehicle for him to show off. And it really reminded me of Skeletine. That's Skeletor's son, I do believe, and he's got a motorcycle. So I don't know if this bike is going to be somewhat based on the bike that Skeletine rode. At least I think he rides a motorcycle. I don't even know if you guys have ever gotten a Skeletine figure. I think he'd look cool. Anyway, that'll do for this episode. Be here next time for Meanwhile, because that's the episode title. Not sure what we're going to see. Skeletor on a kick-butt motorcycle. I have never, in my wildest dreams, imagined Skeletor on a motorcycle, but I would imagine he's going to be pretty formidable. Not that he already isn't formidable. Anywho, hear you next time, guys.